By the way, Garrett, before we begin,
Yeah,
you had a birthday recently, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
I did.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It was good.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep getting older. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, so that's good. All right, hopefully this will be as sweet as birthday cake. Yo, welcome to My Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy. I like to believe when I rock the boat, that makes me charming. Younan. Culturally, we seem to be slowly coming around to acknowledging the enriching value of the 1970s. In the last 2 years, we've had movies like The Holdovers, set in 1970, Saturday Night, of course, the SNL movie from 1975, Daisy Jones and the Six, set in 77, and Woman of the Hour, the Anna Kendrick dating game movie, which was set in 1978. Super creepy. And before that, we enjoyed classics like Crow's Almost Famous, Pharrell's Anchorman, so good, and Fincher's Zodiac. It's not exactly the same odd nostalgia we seem to have for the 60s. However, like an archaeological dig, we're unearthing the value of this slightly overlooked decade. Which of course, includes recognizing all the dope music. Yacht rock is both a pejorative term and, yes, a term of endearment. Sarcasm is always in the mouth of the beholder. Does Steely Dan count as yacht rock? Absolutely. What about Hall & Oates? Nope. That's a whole different Philadelphia sound. To quote the comedian creators of the yacht rock term, all yacht rock is soft rock, but not all soft rock is yacht rock. In the late 1970s and early 80s, yacht rock as a term was not yet a thing. However, the genre was real, and the music was and is spectacular. We're talking about Toto, early Kenny Loggins, Steely Dan, Michael McDonald, and Christopher Cross. This is what the HBO documentary is all about and who it focuses on. Yacht Rock, a documentary, is part of HBO's Music Box series co-founded by Bill Simmons. What Bill did for 30 for 30s at ESPN, he's doing with HBO with the Music Box series. In fact, Garret Price, the Yacht Rock director, kicked off the Music Box series with Woodstock 99 in 2021 as Season 1 or Volume 1. As Garret tells me, Woodstock 99 was a darker story, while Yacht Rock is fun and light. It's obviously reflective in the music for both docs. Modern artists like Questlove and Thundercat describe how those jazzy pop tunes influenced their own sound. Thundercat even recruited Mike McDonald and Kenny Loggins to contribute to his 2017 song, Show You the Way. Smooth jam. In this charming HBO documentary, Questlove says, and I quote, "It's perfect sitting down, dancing music. It's perfect sitting down, dancing music." That's a great way to describe it. Fred Armisen chips in with Yacht Rock. To me, it's a very relaxed feeling. It's like the singers all seem to be saying, hey, it's gonna be okay. Fred Armisen coming in with, hey, it's gonna be okay, to describe Yacht Rock. There's a couple of notables when you watch this HBO documentary. Yacht Rock is a scene. There's an Ancestry.com element that connects a lot of the musicians who played on all these different albums, so they're all connected. I never really thought of it as a scene until I saw it laid out in this Yacht Rock documentary. And now that I've seen it, I see it. I clearly see it. My eyes are open. Now that I've seen it, I see it as a scene. Even if you don't know the bands, trust me, you know the music. I like that Garrett's Yacht Rock documentary acknowledges how often the music has been sampled for rap music. Remember Warren G's monster hit, Regulate? The West Coast hip-hop track samples Mike McDonald's song, I Keep Forgetting, Every Time You're Near. So chances are you do know this music, even if it's just through hip-hop. Honestly, as you're about to hear, director Garret Price tells me, I call Yacht Rock the soundtrack of our lives, whether you like it or not, because it's been in your whole life. If you're seeking good vibes, mellow music infused with a sunny LA mood, Yacht Rock is totally your jam. Yacht Rock is now streaming at HBO Max. For Americans and for Canadians, you can watch it on Crave. Speaking of good vibes, before I cue Stephanie, one of my favorite Yacht Rock songs is Baby Come Back by Player. Oh man, that thing is so smooth it's embarrassing peanut butter. Well now, I know a baby that's always got my back. Stephanie, hit it.
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
I guess you didn't get to use your birthday wish to like help save the Dallas Cowboys season, I guess, right? Like that was the
Oh, ouch, ouch.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's I've used all my wishes up.
Yeah, I bring that up a little bit because Bill Simmons and others from The Ringer are producers on Yacht Rock. Do you guys ever like talk sports with them as you develop these documentary projects?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit like, it's like, he'll use some basketball terminology to get me to the finish line, I guess, sometimes. But for the most part, I mean, he's a diehard movie fan also, and and documentary fan. I mean, he helped create 30 for 30s, and he's kind of doing the same thing with these music stories too, and kind of using these music stories to really dissect culture in America. So he kind of gives me a lot of autonomy to tell these. This is our second project working together. I did this Woodstock 99 was done with them for the first season of Music Box, and
Not just the first season, the first one too.
yeah, the very first one. Yeah.
What was then your pitch for Yacht Rock? Like, how did you pitch that to Bill Simmons and the team?
I said, if I were to do another one, it needs to be a happy story. Woodstock 99 was a dark story where
It was,
I kind of used the concert as kind of a Trojan horse to kind of explore, 90s socio-political culture in America, right? Young men in America. I knew if I was going to do another music doc, I wanted one that just showcased the music and showcased a time period of, and that was light and fun. And I wanted to tell a story that was fun, but not make fun of the music and the people. And Yacht Rock was the perfect sandbox to play in.
Yeah, you referenced it already, but like your Woodstock 99 acknowledged the obvious nostalgia, right? With the Woodstock Festival, right? Leading into the 60s. And then you already, as you said, you touched upon the 90s as well, because that's when it was held. With Yacht Rock, are we going through a similar nostalgia, only like going through the 70s? Because like there's the Holdovers, that's like 1970, like Saturday Night Live movie just came out, that was 1975. Anna Kendrick has the Woman of the Hour, that's set in 1978. This all just came out in the last year or two.
I mean, I worked on a TV show called Daisy Jones and the Six, and that was literally took place in 1970s Los Angeles in the Sunset Strip, kind of this faux Fleetwood Mac band. I think so. I think, people are looking for good vibes and happy stories. And I think, romanticizing that time period, maybe not today. And I think this checks all those boxes. But I also think like new people are discovering this music too. Like this music's made really popular on TikTok. I have a 13-year-old and he knows all the Yacht Rock songs, not because I was working on a documentary for the last 2 years, because favorite TikTokers are, jamming Michael McDonald or Toto, in the background. And I think it's really interesting to see this kind of resurrection of this music.
And the funny thing is, it's not just the resurrection of the music, but it's like it's always kind of been there. Like you have towards the end of the documentary, how it kind of started becoming sampled, right? One of the more famous ones is Warren G's Regulate. That was a monster hit back in the day, but I don't think most people knew that it was Mike McDonald.
Absolutely. Like this music, I always call it the soundtrack of our lives, whether you like it or not, because your whole life it's been grocery stores or doctor's offices or elevators, or your parents' car. It's always been there. But with the hip hop sampling was really important for me to kind of showcase that was the first wave of its resurrection is hip hop artists. And I think it makes a lot of sense because these yacht rockers, they were heavily influenced by R&B and jazz and black music, and they wore that influence on their sleeve. And a lot of these contemporary musicians like Questlove and Prince Paul and Thundercat talked about like these songs were on their parents' radio stations or in their record collections. And they didn't know if there was black or white artists. It didn't matter. It just was all about the music. And it makes full sense that it come back around and they sampled it. They started sampling it for their own records because the music is just so good, as I think quoting Prince Paul in the documentary.
Yeah, the soul and the funk is there, right? Like that's why it translates effortlessly to like hip hop.
Yeah.
Like I think it was Questlove who said this is like music you can kind of dance to in a chair, right? Like, it's a great line.
And you're kind of moving outside of like when everyone was sampling like James Brown or Funkadelic. You can kind of, you're taking some more risks. Like, can you sample, a Steely Dan song or a Kenny Loggins song? And this quest says, yes, you absolutely can.
Yeah, and this idea too of what you're talking about with Prince Paul and others talking about how like they didn't know at the time if these people were like white or black or like where this music was coming from, right? Because a lot of it was kind of just more on the radio. MTV didn't start until 1981. So did that lack of visuals, did that kind of put more emphasis on the music? Make maybe like a greater connection?
I think so. This music was so ubiquitous across, I think all cultures and platforms. And I do think, and I think, I make a point, listen, my antagonist in this movie is MTV, right? The 80s are my best. It makes a lot of sense because music became much more multidimensional, became much more of a marketing tool of like how you dress and how you look. You have to present yourself in a certain way to sell albums.
Duran, for example, right?
Exactly. Or, or the OG Michael Jackson, and that's where it kind of all started. Or like Madonna's and Prince's, it was really changing. Yet we make a point. A lot of these artists played on a lot of those albums in the background because they're such incredible musicians and artists.
Yeah, so watching this doc, I didn't really make the connection until I saw Yacht Rock that Thriller, Michael Jackson's Thriller, basically helped doom Yacht Rock, right? Like it kind of just took over, like you were saying, that visual style, right? And this was kind of similar to the Beatles and Frank Sinatra. Like Frank Sinatra was kind of upended by Beatlemania and these cool kids with these haircuts now, right? Like so do you feel a sadness, I guess, or even like a lost like potential or lost for that lost music? Like, do you accept that that's just the way that pop culture goes, or do you have a sadness for what could have been?
I think there's always waves, right, of what's popular. And this, I think people, you can't forget, like this music was so popular. They were dominating radio charts and Billboard charts and the Grammys. And I think people want change, and yet this is essentially a comeback story because they've all gotten a second chance because of like, I think I try to make the point like hip hop and then the Yacht Rock comedy, series that kind of branded this kind of arbitrary genre that has stuck. And then, now it's more popular than ever with all these, tribute bands, and all these artists themselves are touring again, and they're seeing exponential, waves of new fans at their shows. And it's really special. I asked a question to all the artists. I asked, what was it like touring in the 70s versus touring in your 70s now? And it's a really interesting answer I get because I think a lot of them didn't think they would be doing it this long. And I think they kind of love the fact that people are discovering their music or rediscovering their music that a lot of people I think abandoned at a certain point and now realize, oh, this stuff's great. Why did I forget about this? This makes me feel good. It takes the pressures off the world. And I think that's really important at a time like now.
Yeah, that idea of like touring the 70s versus being your 70s and people discovering the music, like Kenny Loggins is a great example because I grew up in the 80s. So he was Top Gun and he was Footloose, right? And that's who Kenny Loggins is to me. And then as you get older, or even in your documentaries, your show on Yacht Rock, he has this whole other career. I'm like, whoa, right? Like it takes you a while to like readjust your Kenny Loggins perspective, right?
Yeah, I think he was the best at adapting to whatever was popular at the time. I mean, he started out as a folk singer, basically, with Loggins and Messina, then kind of went to a solo artist. I guess that was his Yacht Rock phase. And then, in the MTV era, he found soundtrack work as kind of his bread and butter. And I think we want to make a point. He was the best at adapting. I think there's kind of new opportunities, in the 80s where, people like Michael and Chris talk about, they thought their careers are over, at that time period. They thought the culture moved on. Yeah. I think I said everything works in waves. And I think a lot of times we go back to things that actually were really important to us.
And I like, too, that you included the SCTV sketch with Rick Moranis as Mike McDonald. That's a classic sketch. But it also kind of shows that, like, yeah, as popular as the stuff is, there's also a little bit of element of kitsch, which is like it gets mocked a little bit. Chris Rock, he has in one of his stand-up specials that he talks about how he always has to defend rap music, right? It's one of the genres where you have to defend it, right? So is either like, quote unquote, defending Yacht Rock or mocking it, is that part of the Yacht Rock experience, like an all-inclusive kind of package?
I mean, I think like Michael says in the doc, it's like, I think making fun us means you're paying attention to us, right? It's affecting you somehow. And I think Fred Armisen says something similar also, like, to parody something means you love it,
Mhm.
I think they're easy targets, right?
Yeah.
To make fun. Because again, this music, like I said, it's always been kind of the soundtrack to our lives. It's always been there, right?
Mhm.
So you go after things you know. Again, it's an easy target, but like a lot of it's done out of love and respect and admiration. And I'm just so happy they're kind of getting their dues of where they belong in the history of recorded music. And I think that's really important because I do think the music they were making changed a lot of things. I think music's kind of turning back into that. I would say like groups like Tame Impala and Mac DeMarco, those are modern day yacht rock, musicians for, the things they sing about, the way they play their music.
Mhm. And while I understand that yacht rock is a notable like music genre, is there like a difference between like that music and say guilty pleasures? We've always had guilty pleasures in music, right? Everybody has that song that they leave on in the car radio, right? But they would never play it in front of people or go to those concerts or anything like that. Is there a difference between yacht rock and guilty pleasures?
And the way I kind of, the guys that created the web series and like the word yacht rock, I kind of follow their rules of what yacht rock is, right? And they were very specific. They say that, all of yacht rock is soft rock, but not all soft rock is yacht rock, right? I think a lot of people just think if it's a soft rock song, it's automatically a yacht rock song, and that is not true whatsoever.
Mhm.
It's very definable as like this was music being made in Southern California in the late 70s that was heavily influenced by, jazz and R&B and these complex, chord changes in the music and these incredible session players that were in these recording studios making this really expensive, smooth, polished music. And you start kind of putting the rules of the genre, it starts to kick out a lot of artists at that time period. And you really do understand that this actually is a subgenre. There's actually a scene happening. These guys were all friends making music together. So I think it's too easy to say, a Journey song is a yacht rock song just because it's guilty pleasure. I think I think yacht rock songs are guilty pleasures for people,
Mhm.
but it's definitely classifiable in a certain, space.
This scene that you're talking about, I interviewed Greg Fellinganis a few years back, right? So for people who don't know, he worked
Yes.
on like Toto, he worked Kenny Loggins. You can hear his music on Michael Jackson's Thriller and Off the Wall. Like when I was asking him about working with Toto and Michael Jackson, I was just struck at how effortless his process was. Like it didn't really seem like he understood his contributions, but he didn't seem to understand how like impressive it was, if that makes sense. And the guys in your documentary too seem to like, yeah, I just kind of made up these riffs or whatever. Like it's very casual how they effortlessly create. It's almost like smooth sailing to go back to yacht rock, right?
It's pretty amazing. These musicians, these studio musicians who would just go to the studio and work 3 sessions a day on all kinds of different artists. And they were so good at what they did, they could adapt to whatever was playing, whatever genre or style it was. And it was a day job, right?
Mhm.
But like, there's something lost in like modern music making where a lot of it's done on a laptop in your room by yourself versus all these guys coming together and creating together. And I think that's why this music will last so long. You feel it in the music that it's not artificial, right? It was made with blood, sweat, and tears, even though it was easy playing, some of the instruments for them. So I think that's why it's lasted so long. I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's why it will continue to last beyond us, where everything else feels very disposable in the way it's made nowadays, where these are albums you listen to from beginning to end. It's very tangible. The music, you feel it. And I think that's listen, I wasn't a massive fan of this music until I started making this documentary, and I think myself, like a lot of people, they enter this world ironically because of the name.
Mhm.
But once you appreciate it so much, you kind of fall in love with it and the people making the music. I think that's what I wanted to get across in the film. It's a hangout movie. I want you to just hang out with these musicians and kind of hear their stories and their impact, I think, our culture.
Yeah, you just mentioned something like in terms of the day job. Like, I want to talk about your day job, for lack of a better term, because you mainly edit TV fiction, right? So you've worked on Nashville, Under the Bridge, Tiny Beautiful Things, a bunch of shows like that. Like, does that experience of editing fiction, does that connect or influence how you make nonfiction documentaries?
Absolutely. I love it. I think being a scripted editor makes me a better documentary director, and vice versa. I think directing docs makes me a better editor. I think they both inform each other more than ever. I think people want documentaries to feel like movies,
Mm-hmm.
and they movies to feel like documentaries now, in like real life. And I think, this hybrid space we're kind of living in, like my docs, they very much follow like a 3-act structure, like in a TV show or a movie. They have narrative themes. Like Woodstock, when I pitched it, I go, this is a slasher movie. You have a bunch of teenagers going up for a weekend of drugs, sex, and rock and roll, and bad stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's a slasher film. Yacht Rock is a comeback story. It's a triumphant story. My first doc, Love Antoshan, the late actor Anton Yelchin, that is a coming-of-age movie of Anton coming of age, telling his life story. So these are narrative movies wrapped in a documentary format, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, this circles back to what you were saying about Bill Simmons and being a movie like nerd. Basically, he helped with like the 30 for 30s, right? Kind of popularized a lot of documentaries. The music box work that he's doing here with HBO. These are like creating this hunger, this passion for these unique windows, right? And like your documentary, Yacht Rock, gives you this window into this genre that we hear on SiriusXM and other places, right? But now you can put some of the stories, like you said, and faces and like, oh, okay, this is who Mike McDonald is, right? Like if you hadn't seen like that scene from 40-Year-Old Virgin or something, right? Like right. Now you have a better reference.
I love that because one of Bill's biggest things of going into these music docs for me was like, I don't want to tell like cradle to grave bio doc stories, right? I want to use music as a window into a time to explore culture and us as people. And like that's what's beautiful about doing these stories. This is stories I want to tell also.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say this happened and this happened and this happened and they died and that's the end of the story. I'm not interested.
That's a Wikipedia page.
That's a Wikipedia page. I'm interested in getting in there and living with these people and hanging out with them, letting them tell the story. I'm just there to guide it, right?
Mm-hmm. And part of that story is, of course, the actual music, the Yacht Rock. So do you have any like recommendations? As you said, this was not your world initially. So now you and your son are both kind of jamming to Yacht Rock.
On my playlist? You want my top 5?
Yeah, if you have a top 5, I wasn't going to give you that hard. I was going to leave it open-ended. Like, Baby Come Back by Player is one of my jams, right? Like, that's...
I have a soft spot for all these guys since I've gotten to know I'm making this. All right, number 1, What a Fool Believes. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
Then Heart to Heart, like Kenny Loggins.
Mm-hmm.
Ride Like the Wind with Christopher and Michael. Rosanna by Toto.
Oh, yeah.
Is an absolute jam. And then, man, number 5, let's see, what am I going to go with? Peg, Steely Dan. I think it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a Steely Dan fan until I started making this music, and now I can't stop listening to Steely Dan. So
that's a good tribute. You mentioned Toto, like Africa just came back again because of Weezer, right? Now they had a huge hit with that. You know what I mean? Like, and now people are discovering it and going back to Toto, like discovering the original. So it's like you said, like this culture just kind of keeps circling back and keeps finding ways to resurface.
Yeah, I love that though. I think it's great. Like again, like new generations discovering this stuff. I think that's it's important. These are artifacts that should be rediscovered. They belong in museums, or whether that's Spotify or a record player, and they shouldn't be forgotten. And they deserve their dues of sculpting the musical landscape in America. I think it's really important.
And last question, you recently had that screening at the New York Doc Fest.
Yeah.
How did that go? Like, how was the reception? Were people excited? They come with the sailor hat or like the
no sailor hat though, but Questlove came and that was awesome having him there in person to see the movie. People were I think I am so excited this movie comes out the day after Thanksgiving because a lot of families will be together. There might be some arguments at the Thanksgiving table, especially this year.
Yeah.
A lot of differences, but you know what? We can all get together and mellow out and just watch this film and just vibe out and, think about the good times, And I think that's really important. I'm really excited about that.
There's a positive note. We can end it there. That's perfect. Like
awesome. Thanks, Sammy.
Yeah. So the documentary is Yacht Rock. It'll be on HBO November 29th. I'll put the link. I'll put the trailer as well in the show notes. But thank you so much, Garret, for like hanging out and like making a groovy film, right? Like you said, everyone in the movie is just hanging out, from Mike McDonald, Thundercat, Questlove. Like it's just kind of neat to hear them passionately talk about this era and this music and how it just still reverberates to this day.
Thanks so much for spreading the word, Sammy. I appreciate it, man.
Yo, that was Garret, and the documentary is Yacht Rock. I am Sammy, host of My Summer Lair. Yacht Rock is now streaming on HBO Max and on Crave. HBO Max, of course, for Americans, and Crave for Canadians. When SiriusXM recently brought back their Yacht Rock station, I was so happy. Clearly, there's a velour quality to this music. Is velour fashion? Some people would insist and say no. And sadly, they'd be so wrong. I cheered the return of the SiriusXM Yacht Rock station by getting a pulled pork poutine. Bam, so good. The music and the poutine. Some excellent 70s music on that channel. One of the themes of this episode is welcome back to the 70s and welcome to my pal Sammy. Every week I issue a Substack newsletter that is a companion to this podcast. I put on my best velour tracksuit. I have more than one. And I write and I reflect on pop culture. I offer TV and movie recommendations, set the VCR, things that are quote-unquote pants-worthy, #pants-worthy. It expands the conversation sparked on this podcast. It's my pop culture playground where I drop deeper insights, break down what's fresh and what's fantastic, and hook you up with dope recommendations that'll level up your knowledge. Like wearing a velour tracksuit to a Christmas party, friends and strangers will be so impressed. And plus, it's all free. Google My Pal Sammy, and Google as a digital maitre d' will nod and say right this way. Sign up today. New subscribers will score a sweet Yacht Rock playlist. That's right, if you subscribe today, you get a sweet Yacht Rock playlist. That's almost as cool as a velour tracksuit. Check out the Yacht Rock documentary on Max and on Crave and sign up for My Pal Sammy today. Super easy pop culture homework. I'm taking it easy on you. Thank you so much for listening to me in a Steely Dan world. Yacht Rock, yo.